Hello, welcome to this episode of the Woolly Hub podcast. Today I'm talking with my good friend Tara Swiger about mindset and affirmations and how they are essential to your success. So we actually recorded this episode for her podcast, but she agreed that I could put it on mine too so that you guys could enjoy it as well.
So today I'm super happy to be joined by Joeli of joelicreates.com. Hi, Joeli.
Hello.
And she sent me an Instagram message while she was listening to the episode where I talk about anxiety and depression, and I talk a little bit about cognitive behavioral therapy and how the underlying principle of that therapy is that your thoughts and your behaviors and your feelings are all interconnected. And I think I said your thoughts affect your feelings, which affect your behavior, but it's actually all a circle. They all affect each other. And she's like, let's talk more about this. So I was like, yes. Let's talk more about this. And if you're listening and you enjoy this, we have an upcoming Elevate Your Instagram challenge. You can go to taraswiger.com/elevateinsta to sign up for that. And it's a 5-day challenge. Last time people had amazing results. I'll tell you more about it towards the end of the episode. But let's get into it, Joeli.
Hello. Thank you for having me back. So I was on maybe 3 or 4 months ago talking about Instagram, and we can link to that episode down below. But for those of you that don't know, I am Tara's video editor for the podcast. And so I was editing her podcast episode about the anxiety and depression. And when I heard that quote, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I was just like, yes, that's what I've been trying to say for like so many years. And like just hearing it so wrapped up so succinctly was just like, wow. So yes, then I messaged Tara and was like, we need to talk about this more because you touched on it really briefly. And I think you gave the example of if you tell yourself you can't do something, then you don't then take the actions to do it. Because if you tell yourself you can't do it, then you feel like you can't do it. You feel kind of like, and then so you just don't do any actions. And so then it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy where it just never happens. And then you're like, see, I knew it couldn't happen. and I think many people can empathize with that, can understand that, and have felt that in their own lives. I think that's like universally accepted. If you tell yourself you can't, then you can't. But where I wanted to focus on is the idea that if you tell yourself you can do something, then that then impacts your feelings about it, which then impacts your actions, which then leads to you actually doing the things you need to do whatever it was. And I think this is not where we disagree, but where we just have like differing viewpoints. So I wanted to kind of discuss it more. I do want to give a disclaimer that I am super passionate about this, but it doesn't mean that I believe like I'm 100% right or that I want to like bully anyone into my beliefs. Like totally okay to disagree. If you disagree, leave a comment below or send us an email and tell me you disagree. Like just because I come across passionate does not mean that I like think I'm right and no one else can tell me anything.
Exactly. And that's why I like talking to you about this, because we're both coming from personal experience of both of our own and the clients we work with, and like watching what works for them. And like that's, I'm always wanting to see what actually works for people, because I might be a weirdo and what works for me might work for nobody else. So I like to like test it on my guinea pigs and then realize like this works for people in general, or at least the kind of people who work with me.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a good point that I should explain that I'm also coming at this from a place of anxiety and not really depression, but just feeling kind of like unmotivated. And, so yes, I have a history of kind of general anxiety about things. And I was getting to the point where I was having panic attacks on a fairly regular basis. And it had to do with a lot of things like not sleeping and, family circumstances and stuff. But kind of like January of last year, I was like, I'm done. I'm done with this. I'm going to try a few things. And if they don't work, then I'm going to the doctor because I am done. And I think people can sympathize with kind of hitting that wall. And so the things that I tried were meditation and affirmations, as well as getting more sleep and getting some vitamin D, because January in England, there's no sun. So taking a vitamin D supplement and taking a probiotic. So a few like actual things. But what I think made the biggest difference for me was the meditation, which I call mindfulness, which is kind of exactly what you explained in the episode last week. Just realizing what feelings are coming into my head, what thoughts are coming into my head, and kind of stopping that pattern. And then for me, affirmations, which were taking those negative thoughts and turning them into a positive thought.
Mm-hmm.
So my affirmation for like all of the beginning of last year was, I am healthy in body and mind, and I'm committed to making choices that lead to success. Mm-hmm. And so that's like what I told myself. Do you do the Headspace app?
Yeah.
So there's a point in that meditation where he tells you to like think about why you're doing this and like the impact it's going to have on people. So like, you know, I would say like my kids deserve to have a mom who's patient and kind and not like stressed about everything. And I would tell myself like, I am healthy in body and mind and committed to making choices that lead to success. And I think that ended up making a huge difference for me, because for me, that stops the cycle of the bad thoughts and replaces it with good thoughts.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So now where we talked about this in our Instagram a little bit, there is some kind of debate about affirmations and about whether it's lying to yourself or not.
Well, so what I have read and found kind of when I talk to people about this is that there is a difference between, like, I'm so glad you shared your own affirmation, because so what that is like almost like a mission statement, right? Like you're going to make choices that lead to you being healthy and success. And that is, I think, different than like, what's the classic SNL sketch? Like, I'm special and people love me or something. Like,
yeah, there's those ones, or there's the like, I have $1 million in my bank account.
So that is actually, and I feel like it was in one of the Sean Achor books about happiness, either The Happiness Advantage or his first one was called something with happiness. Anyhow, we'll link it up. The author Sean Achor. But there's studies about that just affirmations that are statements of fact that aren't fact yet, actually they tend to make people feel worse about themselves. So if you say I have $1 million in my bank account and yet it's not true, you're not doing, you know you're lying to yourself, and that tends to hurt your self conception,
yes.
like, or perception, right? Whereas something like I'm healthy in body and mind is something that is a continual decision. And then you even said, and I'm committed to making decisions, right? Yes. So that is an ongoing choice you're making. And that is pretty much exactly what I do too, is affirm what kind of choices you want to make, as opposed to make statements that are not true, that are measurably untrue. Yes. So what I love about I'm healthy in body and mind is that you can list a bunch of ways you were healthy that day, even if you ate a cookie too. Or, I mean, you ate like a gallon of ice cream. Yeah. You can also say, but I took my vitamin D, I got outside in the sun, I was kind and loving, because like physical touch is also part of bodily and mental health. That like allows you to you're not lying to yourself. And your brain doesn't feel like you're lying to yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I do daily gratitude every day, but I make my gratitude relate to my affirmation. So if my affirmation is I'm healthy in body and mind, then I would write, I am so grateful for the sunshine and for the walk that I had, and, you know, like that, whatever, relating to exercise, or I'm grateful that, anytime I didn't have like an anxiety moment, like I'm grateful that my son went out in this experience and I felt okay about it. So I do, and I think I pretty much got this from you, because you talk about small biz wins. Like when you feel like you can't do something, you remind yourself of all the times that you actually have done it.
Yes.
So I do this, with all, if I have, like in January last year, I had just one affirmation, and now I've moved on. And I'm working on, I did a period of having money affirmations, which were not I have $1 million in my bank account. But my money affirmation was, one, money flows abundantly into my life, because my negative thought is there's not enough money out there. Like, there's just, everyone else has the money and I don't have any of it, and I'm never going to get any of it. So that's the negative thought. So the affirmation is money flows abundantly into my life. And the way I either do gratitude, like I'm grateful for the money in my bank account, but you have to feel it. Like you can't just write it. Like you actually have to like think about it and think, you know what? I don't have a negative balance. I don't have zero. I have money in that, and I'm going to choose to be grateful for it. Or I do my daily income tracker, and I write down every day the money that comes in, because it's proving my affirmation. So I'm changing my thought and I'm changing my feeling, and then I'm backing all that up and going, oh yeah, which then leads to me feeling more grateful for money. And so I think what people think is with affirmations is that I'm going to affirm like a 5,000 pound check appearing in my post box. But that's not the goal of the affirmation for me. The goal is to change how I feel about my current money situation, right? Like I'd rather be happy with the money I have now than have £1 million and still feel like a failure.
Right. And that's the key. And I, as we were talking, I realized like, so just to back up a little bit, like what we're talking about with affirmations are statements that affirm something you want to feel more of. So I think when you think about it like that, and not in the, I'm going to create something out of nothing with this statement. And instead it's like, I want to feel more grateful. So I'm going to affirm that I'm grateful. So a gratitude practice affirms that you feel grateful. A noticing when money shows up for you affirms that you feel abundant or taken care of. Noticing when love shows up for you. For my friends who are in unhappier relationships or are single, noticing all of the love that they have in their life right now, even if it's maybe not a romantic relationship, is affirming to feeling loved. And if what everybody usually really wants out of their relationship is to feel loved and cared for. And you can feel like that without the thing you thought, like the husband you thought you were going after. And so all of this to say, like what we're talking about is just affirming, first of all, identifying the feelings you want to feel, and then affirming you could feel them now. And then what those thoughts, so we were talking about thoughts, behavior, and action. What the thoughts do is change it so you're feeling that way, and then you're able to take action to make you feel that way more. So it's not about just like things magically happening, but what does happen is you start to notice all the ways this has already been happening in your life, right? Like your bills are already paid, you're already taken care of. And one of the things with money that I dealt with was I would get anxious. So for years, we didn't have money to pay the bill that was due in 2 or 3 days, but then it would be okay. It would be taken care of. But I would always be anxious about the bill that was due in 2 or 3 days. And then as my business started to grow and things started to get better, and I would have the money for the bill and I could even pay it early, then I would be nervous about the bill that will come due in 2 weeks. And Joeli is cracking up because she does this too. And then I would feel all of the same anxiety of the money that I didn't have rent on the 30th of the month for a bill for the rent for the next month. And like in my anxiety state, that was this, it felt exactly the same. And so I had to break that pattern of thought, because what my brain did is said, well, you feel anxious about money, so let's find a reason to feel anxious. So I would literally look at my bills for the next month or two and say, oh no, what about this? Like I should be panicked because what if that doesn't work out? And I had to realize, and I talked about this in the very first anxiety episode, that what your brain does is when you are feeling a feeling, it then looks around for proof to affirm and confirm what's going on. So when you have a panic attack, like in your case, I know your son is allergic to a lot of things. That would make me panicky too. So when you're having a panic attack that something might happen with him, your brain then gives you all of the times that something has happened and he has had a reaction. And the same thing with my money situation. My brain would throw up times when things had been scary. And the affirmation says, hey, but let's look for the times things weren't scary. Let's look for the times that the bills were paid. Let's look for the fact, instead of listing all my bills and finding a spot 2 or 4 or 6 weeks in the future where the bills might not be paid, what if you look at tomorrow and today and And that's what you're talking about, right? Like
Yeah.
noticing the money that is in your life as opposed to the money that may not be there in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm cracking up because I have a tax bill due January 31st. It's like 10 months from now, or like was when I got it. And
Right.
I am so stressed about it. I'm getting better. Like, I'm like, it's 10 months away. Like, I broke it down into like how much I'd have to save every month. I'm like, it's fine. But it's so stressful. It's 10 months away. Like, why am I? But, and it's not just like, oh, I have this thing. Like, oh, I'm stressed. It's like, I am not going to pay this, and they are going to take me away in handcuffs because I can't pay my tax bill. My family's going to be bankrupt, and I'm putting them out on the like it's a panic, and
Yeah.
it is. It's exactly the same as if the bill was due tomorrow. It's
Right.
crazy, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's exactly it. Our brain loves patterns, and they have done scientific test after scientific test that proves this, where they have done so there's a thing called the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, which is when you hear something strange, like I've just said that word is now, you're not going to hear it like for the next 3-4 days, like because your brain likes a pattern, and so it's heard this thing and now it's going to notice every time it hears it from now on. And people say, oh, coincidence. Like, no, all of these things would have happened anyways, but they're brought to your attention because you're focusing on it. So there's a lot of scientific proof that what you focus on, you see more of.
Mm-hmm.
So if you focus on how crappy your husband is and how he never picks up the laundry, I guarantee you what you're going to see is every single time he doesn't pick up his laundry. Whereas if you focus on, my husband is kind and grateful, and find one thing that he does that you do like. If you focus on that, you will then see all the times he is kind and grateful and whatever. And so it's not that you're changing anything about your circumstances. You're just changing your focus so that you see more of what you're focusing on, and therefore change the way you're feeling about it.
Exactly. And it's like a filter you're putting in front of the lens of your life. So am I going to filter out, or am I going to filter and see all of the mess, or filter and see all of the good stuff? And none of this, like we're saying, it doesn't change your situation. And there are lots of situations you need to take action to change. But if you're focused on how miserable you are, or on how miserable the situation is, you cannot come up with solutions for the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And some of my favorite tests show that like the more they make people focus on the problem and how bad the problem is, the fewer solutions that they can see, even though there are solutions all around. And the more they tell people, relax about this problem, it's not a big deal, they can suddenly spot way more of the solutions. There's like a study where you're reading a newspaper and there's an ad that says like, we're going to give you money if you just bring this to the person. And the people who are like focused and were focused on the article don't see that ad, but they would make $10.
Yeah.
And like, and I see this in my own life, and I see this with the people that I work with. And even, you know, when I'm talking to Jay about his problems, is like, okay, let's take a step back from what's going wrong, because as long as you're real close up on what's going wrong and how bad, you can't find solutions. And the bad things you feel are only going to get better if you take action to change them.
Mm-hmm.
So like, this isn't just like, look on the sunny side, everything will be great. This is like, this then leads to you spotting a solution and you deciding, oh, to do that solution, I'd have to do X, Y, and Z. So now I can take action to do X, Y, and Z because I can see it. And the big thing is, I believe it's possible. Right. And that's, so the affirmations are just like you saying, and you correct me if I've got this wrong, but it's like you reminding yourself, look for the good, look for the solution, because you know that leads to action, which brings you more of the good or brings you closer to the solution.
Yes. So yes, that study with the newspapers, Richard Wiseman, I believe his name is, and he wrote a book, something about luck, like the luck something or other. And he did the study, what makes people lucky. And they found that the only thing that makes people lucky is that they see more opportunities. So they had them flip through the newspaper, and the people who felt that they were lucky see these ads, whereas the people who felt they were unlucky were just focused on the problem, which was like to count the number of photos or something. And they're so focused on that they don't see the solutions. So these are not just like fun words that Tara and I like to throw around. Like we're not just, just making this stuff up. Like it's actually like proven, documented that if you focus on your problem, you are less likely to see solutions. So the only way to see more solutions is to be able to step back from your problem. And you talk about the filter. We'll link to the Invisible Gorilla video down below. And it's just mind-blowing how strong that filter is when you're focusing on something, how much you don't see. Well, yeah, you have to, I don't want to spoil the video, but so go watch the video and you'll see like how much focusing on something prevents you from seeing like the big picture.
Right. And the main reason Joeli and I talk about this is because, and the main reason we wanted to both put this on our channels and our podcast is because you, the creative entrepreneur, the person who wants to change something in your life, you are doing a big change. If you're starting a business and you're selling your thing, that's a big change, and it requires you to do things you've never done before. And it requires you to, along with that, like learn to think in a way you've never thought before. If you were go to school, get a degree, get a job, the boss tells you what to do kind of person, you can operate like that a lot without having to spot solutions to problems. Now, you've definitely had other problems in your life, I know for sure, but like becoming a business owner then puts you 100% responsible for all of the problems and all of the solutions. And so if you're using a filter where you can't see solutions, that's going to keep you from building any kind of business, because business is just a constant problem solving.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, the other thing I wanted to touch on was, I've talked about this before, like in live videos to many people, and they still have a problem with this. Like and it feels like they're just telling themselves, well, affirmations are just baloney. And so then they don't ever try them. So the other way I want you guys to think about this is giving yourself a pep talk, right? So I'm a parent, I have 2 kids, and I am constantly affirming them, right? Like I tell them, wow, that was really kind what you did for your brother there. You're such a kind person. Who gives me my affirmations? Who tells me like my positive, words for the day? That we tell ourselves, it's something ridiculous. Like 75% of the things we think are negative. Like when you talk to yourself, how many times do you say like, I just can't do that. I suck at that. Like I'm no good at that. Instagram doesn't work. Like think about your vocabulary throughout the day. It can be so negative. And for me, like affirmations are also the one time where like I talk nicely to myself. I tell myself how great I am. And again, so some people said to me when I told them this, well, that feels like a lie. If I tell myself how great I am, I don't believe it. And so what I do, I kind of imagine like stepping outside of my body for a moment. And I know that sounds weird, but like I imagine the voice is just like a little person on my shoulder. And even if I don't believe it, I just imagine like whatever, my best friend or whoever just shouting these words at me. And so even if you don't believe them, it's not lying, because like Tara said, it's not a fact. It's not, I have $1 million. It's, I'm a kind person. I'm a caring person. I'm a patient person. And even if it doesn't feel like that, I do think with those things, having someone tell you them over and over, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a friend, or whether it's yourself, can be really helpful for just morale purposes.
And the other way to think about this is you can ask yourself, so what I do with people when they're like, no, this is definitely not possible, this definitely won't work. I do this when I teach social media a lot to people, to older women who are resistant to social media. As I said, so let's pretend that this does work. Like, let's assume that this is true. If this was true and it worked for you like it's worked for millions of other people at increasing your sales, would it be worth the time and energy? If, after I've told you how much time and energy it takes, just pretend. And then if you take a couple minutes pretending it's true, you're like, oh, yeah, okay, well, it would be worth it just to test it out and see if it's true. So like if you are feeling like you're a horrible person and you're telling yourself you're kind each morning, you can shift that to, what if it was true I was a kind person, right? So like, like with your kids, right? Like, oh, that was really kind. You would also ask yourself, if you're kind of thinking your kid is being a jackass all the time, ask yourself, well, what would it look like if he was kind? oh, he would be nice to his brother. Actually, he does that. So, okay,
Yeah.
he is kind. This is especially like helpful with your partner. Like, what if I noticed all the positive things about my partner? Or what if I noticed every time he was kind? What would that look like? And then your brain, because your brain is a problem solving machine, it will start giving you answers. But the problem is you're asking the wrong question if what you're unknowingly asking is, what are all the ways they're screwing up? Or what are all the ways I'm screwing up? Or what are all the ways I'm not going to be able to do this? You can change that question to, what are all the skills and abilities and things I've done that show me that I could do this?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So like whether it's kindness or whether it's like a business acumen or whether it's like, should I Instagram or not? The question is just change the question to, what would it look like if this did work? Or would I be willing to believe that this is possible?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times that will turn on the part of your brain that's like, okay, well, let's try it. And that's why I'm always talking about experimenting. You don't have to believe it will definitely work, but you have to believe it's possible and then test it. And then if it doesn't work, fine. But it's better than not doing anything and not seeing any growth or any change or getting any of the things that you want.
Yeah. And if you kind of want to go even further, you did a podcast about growth mindset, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure too. So go watch that one, because I was reading that book. It's called Mindset by Carol Dweck. And I kind of realized how much this ties into a growth mindset, because
Mm-hmm.
like a growth mindset is, at the end of the day, being willing to take on challenges without having the failure of the challenge then reflect on you. So people with a fixed mindset avoid challenges because they don't want to do anything they might fail at, because they can't cope with being a failure. And
Mm-hmm.
people with a growth mindset see challenges as an exciting thing that they can just try. And if it doesn't go as well as they hoped, that's okay. That's not a reflection on them. And so I think that's the other thing with believing that you can do it. So if you tell yourself like, oh, Instagram will never work for my business, you have to shift that mindset of this is not going to work to this could work. What would it look like if it did work? And then believing that if it doesn't work, it's not because like you sucked like you thought you did. So it's kind of like this whole big loop that you kind of have to make mindset shifts at each point in the loop.
Exactly. And the thing about the growth versus fixed mindset is it's really, like she said, about your failure not being proof of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Who you are is separate of your success and failure. And if you were raised or trained that that's not true, you have to do some work, and meditation or affirmations can help you recognize that, I'm like deciding my worth as a person is based on success or failure. You wouldn't do that to your kids. You wouldn't say, son, you're only lovable if you're a success. But we do that to ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're only worthy of love and happiness if you're super successful and have more Instagram followers than anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
That's just ludicrous. That's not the kind of values that I know all of you listeners, I know you don't hold those values, and yet you hold yourself to that standard. And so by recognizing that and then affirming something else, right? Affirming that, that you're going to look for all of the times you're succeeding, as opposed to thinking, just assuming you're a failure if things don't work out exactly the way that you want. And this is also why, it all fits together. This is also why we focus on celebrating the small wins.
Yes.
Because when you celebrate the small wins, you build up proof that you don't suck. And also you put on the filter of looking for all those wins as opposed to all those losses. Because
exactly.
It's just, which one are you going to look at? And which one will make you more likely to do the next thing you need to do?
Yes. So I actually just did a video about lessons learned from trying to do a video every day in April. Mm-hmm. And I put out first of all, April isn't even over yet, but I've already deemed it a failure because I didn't put a video up every day. And someone on my comments was like, you could just keep going and see how far you get. And I was just like, nope, it's a failure. So what I said is I've put out, I think I recorded the video on the 20th, and I'd put out 9 videos at that point. That one was going to be number 10. But all I could focus on, and I do this, I have a habit of doing this, all I could focus on was what I didn't do. Now, so the affirmation for me is something is better than nothing. That 9 videos, 10 videos was better than 0. But if I didn't focus on that, if I kind of just said, well, I suck at sticking to a schedule, I suck at doing anything consistently, I just might as well not do it. I'm not going to try. I'm just not going to quit the whole YouTube thing. That would be my fixed mindset. But if I affirm that, some was better than none, and good is good enough. If that's my affirmation, good is good enough, not perfect, then I think, okay, well, I tried something and I did a really good effort, and 10 videos is better than no videos. And I actually just put up another one yesterday because April isn't over yet. So yeah, like it's about, you've got to have that whole positive mindset so that you can keep going. Otherwise, you just let every failure and every setback be the worst thing in the world.
Yeah. And of the people that I see that start businesses and then immediately stop, or start businesses and get really down and then decide to close it, and they close it unhappily, not like I've had messages recently from people since my business versus hobby episode where they go, you know what? I decided I don't want this to be a business. I feel amazing now. Like people who close and feel awful about themselves, invariably they go through the, oh, I didn't do a video every day in April, I'm a failure. Oh, look, wait, I also failed at this thing. Oh, I'm also failing at this thing. Oh, I went to the craft show and I only sold $500 instead of $800 worth of stuff, so I'm a failure. And they're failures when you listen to them. They're failures when you listen to them. I know other people who would consider those massive successes. 10 videos in April is a massive success for 90% of the people listening. And so it's really about perspective, and you set your own perspective and you decide if you're going to call everything a failure, or you're going to recognize it could be a win, or it could just be data.
Exactly. And that's what I tell the people that I coach, is that I tell them everything's just data. We're going to try this thing and we're just going to gather data, and it can't possibly be a reflection of you. When I was in chemistry class and we had to mix all these things together and mine turned purple instead of yellow, it wasn't a reflection on me. It was data from the experiment. Like, this is what happens when you don't measure it precisely or something. Like, but somehow my business, experiments in my business somehow become Joelie's the worst or Joelie's the best. And that's not the way I want to continue anymore.
Right. And if you guys are having like a hard time being easy on yourself, I find it really helpful to think, would you treat a 3-year-old like this? Mm-hmm. Would you tell the 3-year-old, oh my goodness, you didn't do a video every day, you don't get my love and affection? Yeah. No, that's crazy. That's just horrible. So part of it is treating yourself not just like you treat others, but like you treat a really cute small child who's trying their best, because we know you're trying your best.
So like wrapping it up, I think step 1 is being mindful of your thoughts. Like, would you agree? Like being aware that the negative thoughts are there. What are the things you're telling yourself, I can't do, this will never work, I'm just not good at? Then, so stopping that negative thought, then I would suggest trying to reframe that into a positive thought that reflects where you want to be, but has some element of truth, and then look for ways that's true, whether it's gratitude or whether it's just listing like biz wins, or instead of like a to-do list, you do the like got done list and showing yourself what you got done every day. And then, so we've stopped the negative thought, we've turned it into a positive thought, and then we're proving to ourselves how that positive thought is actually true.
Yes. Totally. And and I would just want to reiterate, if your negative thought is about your situation, look, when you're reframing it, stop saying I'm so miserable because XYZ, and shift it to, if I could fix this and I had all of the skills and all of the money and all of the resources I needed to fix this, what would I do? And then don't list 2 things, list like 100. And what you'll come up with is that you have way more solutions than you think, and they don't all require all of the money and time and energy you think they do. So like if it's about a situation, sometimes we need to change situations, but often we just need to change the framework or the filter that we're using to look at that situation. So I always tell people, like, I need to reframe how grateful I am for my husband, but that's because he's a great husband. If it was an unhappy marriage, I would need to look for other solutions. And that's one of the things that I think when people just hear the word affirmation, they're like, oh, that's just positive thinking. That's just putting a rosy glow on things. No, it's identifying the positive and the solution so then you can take action.
Yeah. And I think it's also understanding that the voice in my head isn't always right.
Preach.
Because I have a really good life. And if I'm feeling unhappy, one of the things I learned is that no one else can make me feel happy. I am the only person in charge of my happiness. And happiness is a decision. Like, I need to choose to be happy. And for me to choose to be happy, I need to see all of the wonderful things in my life. So yes, there are situations, I'm not saying you affirm your way out of like total crap situation. I'm saying it's when the filter in your head is broken, when you can't see all of the good that you have. This can be a really great way of changing your filter.
Yes. Yes. And when you're looking to build something that you've never done before, affirming that you're capable of doing it, like one of my favorite affirmations for the people I work with is, you are capable of figuring this out. Or another one I've heard is, everything is figure outable. You can just, that's an affirmation. You say to yourself, everything is figure outable and I'm capable of figuring it out.
Yeah.
If you did that, like 90% of the problems that people come to me with, if they believed that it was both figure outable and that they were capable of doing it, they would fly forward, because they would start taking the action and start figuring out the solutions and start doing the work. And that goes back to really deciding you're going to believe it.
Yes. And because also new situations are scary, and it's like recognizing that just because you're scared or just because you're feeling like you can't do it doesn't mean that that's true. It doesn't mean that you're doing something that you have no right or don't deserve to do. It's things in our head are not always true. And so, yeah, I think people put like this really negative slant on affirmations and they just wipe it away, but they forget like that so much of what is in our head is not based in reality, and that it's totally natural to feel scared, unsure of, discouraged, frustrated when you're trying something new and when you're building a business, and not even starting a new business, but anytime you take a new leap in your business, from doing one product to doing 5 products, or from going from, 4-figure months to 5-figure months, whatever the leap is, you still get scared and you still have to remind yourself, like, no, you've got this. Like, you're awesome. It's okay. We've done this. We've been okay in the past and we'll continue to be okay. So that's what I want people, like the biggest takeaway I want people to get from this is that the voice in your head is not always right and you can change it.
Absolutely. And we're going to list the resources that we mentioned below. And because you mentioned reframing, there's a whole 2 episodes I've done about reframing. Like, just remember, the voice isn't right and you are in charge of it. Now, again, like, we're not talking about policing every single thought you have. We just mean like reframing things so that you can find the solution and find the positives and be grateful and then take action. And it's funny because if you had told me 3 or 4 years ago, we would talk about all of this mindset stuff. And I know you're like this too. I would not have believed it, because I thought, well, people just need knowledge. But what I've learned after meeting so many of you and teaching so many classes is that you actually don't need more knowledge. You need more confidence, and you need more, you need to shift your perspective about if you're really capable of doing it or not. Because no matter how much knowledge you get, if you don't think you're capable of enacting that knowledge, you're not going to do it.
Totally agree. Like, 5 years ago, I would have just told you, you're either good at something or you're not. Like, I genuinely believed that if I didn't get something the first time, that it just meant I wasn't capable of it. That, I failed my first physics test. I failed every single physics test after that. I just thought I couldn't do it. Like, the concept that you could study for something and then get better at it and actually learn material, foreign to me. So completely agree.
And I actually find, so we were wrapping up and now I'm going to say this instead. I actually find that a lot of times it's the A students and the achievers who struggle with this the most, because you might have done, and Jay definitely experienced this, his early schooling experience, he didn't have to do anything and he just got it. And he thought, I'm not learning anything. I just know everything. Like, it's all just natural to me. So no big deal. So when he first encountered struggle, his parents did not imbue a sense of, it's okay if things are hard, you can work and get better. They were just like, you're smart, you're brilliant. And so what that mindset book talks about is when you say that to someone, they don't then want to try things that will prove it wrong, because that becomes your sense of self, that I just am smart, not that I could learn something new and get better. So what I find is that if you've been a student and achiever, you're actually worse at taking risks where you might mess up. And you're worse at like that whole mindset that like, oh, I could learn to be better, because your sense of self is really embedded in that. But I already know everything. I'm already good. Like I'm already on top of things. So then when life throws you a loop and you're not, or you try something and you don't know it, like that risk seems even bigger.
Yeah. Yeah.
It might prove you're not who you always thought you were.
This is why we signed our kids up for Kung Fu, because both the kids are quite strong academically, but Kung Fu, they started out knowing nothing and then they got their white belt. I can't tell you how many times I've milked this white belt story because they got him. I go, wow, look at what you learned. Remember when you started and you didn't know anything and now you have this white belt and look how much you've learned. We use it with everything. They can't tie their shoes. Yeah, but do you remember when you couldn't do Kung Fu? Well, this is the point where you can't tie your shoes, but you're going to get, we use it all the time. And you need to find that story for yourself. Remember when you couldn't do something and now you can? All the time.
Yeah, it's so funny because I feel like I do that in the Starship chat. Someone will be like, everything is horrible. I'm a failure. I've messed this up. I've definitely killed my business. And I'm like, well, remember when 6 months ago you didn't know how to whatever, and then you did it. And if you can do that for yourself, and it's really hard to do it for yourself. Jay sometimes does it for me and I do it for him, but only because we've told each other, you know, and it's what I talk about in the Biz Confidence Challenge. Your confidence is built on actually, like, you need to gather up facts that help build your confidence. Like you were saying about not being consistent with your videos. And I told you, but you are consistent with so much in your life. You feed your kids consistently. You pay your bills consistently. You get dressed consistently. Like that, you do have consistency, so you can build on that. The same thing is true of anything you do in your business or your life, is you have done something like earn your white belt. So just apply it to tying your shoes or building your first website or whatever it is.
Absolutely. So hopefully we've convinced some people of that.
Yes. And hopefully after listening to this, you get some ideas about the place where, so, you know, I always give you guys homework. What I want you to think about is, where have you been telling yourself you're not good enough or you can't do something? You're using a fixed mindset, believing you're just not good enough in it. And what could you tell yourself, or either what could you affirm to yourself each day, or what question could you ask that would open up the possibilities and make you believe that you're actually capable of working through this? And just one more tiny personal story. It's interesting because I've been doing this business thing since 2006. But when I encountered this anxiety thing and I realized I had general anxiety disorder and panic attacks, the fixed mindset like wiped me out, because I thought, well, this is how I am. This is how I've always been. This is my coping mechanism. This is how I deal with the world. The world is a scary place and I'm a scared person in it. And it took months to actually want to say, I could maybe change this. Like, this is something I could grow to learn to operate in the world in a way that didn't involve panic. And that is like, so when we're talking about it, business or white belts or tying shoes, it's like everything. You will again and again come in contact with situations where you think that's unfixable. And by meditation and affirmations or asking better questions, you can recognize, maybe I am the kind of person that can do this. Yeah. So we want to encourage you to remember that. We believe you're totally the kind of person who could do it.
I do, genuinely, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I know. It's like every one of you I've ever met and talked to, I never walk away thinking, nope, couldn't do it. If anything, I walk away thinking they don't believe they can do it, so they won't. They have to believe they can do it. But if Instagram is one of those things, or your social media or your marketing are one of those things you believe you can't do, Joeli and I are not just about mindset stuff. We actually put real practical do this steps in a free challenge. It's 5 days. It starts May 8th. The next round of it It's the Elevate Your Instagram Challenge. I know some of you took it the last time we held it. You're welcome to sign up and take it again. Actually, you'll get an email from me if you took it the first time, and I'll ask you if you want to take it again. If you haven't signed up, you can go to taraswiger.com/elevateinsta, and we actually tell you, like, go to Instagram, do this, and you will learn things that will make your Instagram better and grow faster. We have all kinds of people who did it the first time that are like, this actually works.
It's worth signing up for. Again, if you enjoyed it last time, it's not going to be 100% the same. I do just want to do a few little tweaks here and there.
Yeah, so we're going to make it even better based on your feedback and what we saw worked for you guys and what confused you guys. We're going to make it even clearer and better. So I'm going to do it again. I mean, all of these things I know to do, and yet I fall away from doing it. So I'm going to do it again this time too. That's taraswiger.com/elevateinsta. And you can find Joeli and all of her wonderfulness, including video editing services and an awesome online Facebook community, which people love. You find it all at joelicreates.com. Thanks so much for being with us, and have a really fantastically enthusiastic day full of believing you can do whatever it is you want to do.